Hello everyone, welcome to module 4 on unit 3 engineering materials, and today we will be seeing about lubricants and its properties, and myself Dr. Chandrasekhar from the division of chemistry S&H. Right, as I said, today we are going to see about lubricants, and if you remember in the last class we saw about classifications of lubricants, and in today's class we will see some of the important properties of lubricants. So, we will go in order one by one. Okay. So, to look into what are the properties we are going to see today. So, these are some of the properties. So, more than a property, it is an inherent characteristics of a lubricant which is essential to be checked before that lubricant is used in any of the application. Okay, it is more than the property of a lubricant, it is the characteristic nature of the lubricant which it has to fulfill in order to give a better property, right. So, these are some of the things, right. So, we will see one by one. The first one will be viscosity and viscosity index, then we will see the neutralization number. This is also called as acid value or acid number, right. And third one we will see saponification number, right, and this neutralization and saponification number are more or less the same. There is a small difference between these two, so that we will see in the coming slides, right. And then we will see aniline point, right. This is based on the temperature in which the system is going to be subjected, and we will see about cloud and pour point. Then we will see flash and fire point, and the last one we will see the carbon residue, right. So, these are some of the properties which we will be covering in today's class. Okay. So, moving forward, first we will see about viscosity and viscosity index, right. Viscosity, as you all know, it is the resistance of flow of a liquid. Okay. So, if you remember the earlier class, I said about friction. Friction is on movement of two solid surfaces, whereas here the viscosity is about the liquids which resist flowing when it is subjected to flow against gravity. Okay. So, viscosity is the measure of the internal resistance to the motion of a fluid. Okay. So, this is the internal resistance against the gravitational force, and this resistance is mainly because of the forces of cohesion, right. So, the resistance of flow of any liquid, if it is viscous, that is mainly due to some forces of cohesion, and cohesion is nothing but attractive forces. Attractive forces, right. And because of these attractive forces, the liquid has been stopped to flow in a natural way. Okay. So, these are the forces which resist the flow, and because of this viscosity happens, right, and that is what resists the flow of liquid, right. So, at low viscosity oil, right, if a system is having a low viscosity, that means it is very thin and it can flow easily. Okay. Any system whose viscosity is less, that means it can flow freely, or it is very thin, it will not form any kind of adhesion among those molecules, so it can flow freely. And if a system is having very high viscosity, that means it forms a very thick material and it will flow slowly. Okay. Simple as that. If a system is viscous, that means it will not flow freely, and if it is less viscous, it will flow freely. Okay. So, this is important to understand the coming topics, right. So, this is a simple example of the different viscosities of different systems which we use in our day-to-day life, and this is normal water. You can see the arrows which are joining or attaching the adjacent molecules, and you can see there is not much attractive forces between these water molecules. Even if there is attractive force, it is not hindering the free flowing of water. Okay. So, now coming to this one, which is an oil, olive oil, which is very thick compared to water, and you can see here there are more number of connecting points or adhesion forces between the oil molecules. Because of this more attractive force, the oil has got some amount of resistance against the flow. Okay, and still higher viscous material is our honey. Okay, you can see here how it has been attached with each other, and because of this more adhesion forces between each molecule, the resistance is higher and the flow of honey is restricted. So, this is a simple example to visualize how the viscosity builds up in a system, okay, compared to water and to honey. Okay, right. So, moving on with respect to temperature. Okay, so viscosity as such, this is what. So, what will be the effect of viscosity when a temperature is increased? Why we have to study as a function of temperature? Because the lubricants or oil, whatever used for machineries, that will be subjected to a varied temperature ranging from low temperature to high temperature. So, if you want to use a material as a lubricant or as an oil, so it has to withstand this wide temperature range. So, we have to check this wide temperature range, what will be the characteristics of the viscosity if you change, right. So, that if you see the viscosity, if you increase the temperature, usually it decreases. If you increase the temperature of a material, the viscosity decreases. The reason is simple as that all these attractive forces, whatever I showed there, so these attractive forces starts breaking. Once these attractive forces are broken, then the material can flow freely. Right. So, at higher temperatures, these attractive forces or the forces of cohesion are disturbed, or mostly it will be broken. Once these attractive forces are broken, then the material can flow freely. That is why with increasing temperature, usually viscosity decreases. So, that is what written here. Viscosity decreases with increasing temperature due to decrease in the intermolecular attraction. Okay, so there will be lesser amount of intermolecular attraction because of breaking the adhesive forces. So, because of this, your material will start flow freely with increase in temperature. Okay, and this is the standard one. For a good lubricating oil, which has to give its lubricating property, the viscosity should not change much with change in the temperature. Okay, if you want to buy a lubricant or an oil for any purpose, that lubricant should not change its viscosity as a function of temperature. If it is not changing as a function of temperature, that lubricant oil or that oil is a very good lubricating oil. Okay, so the material should not change its viscosity as a function of temperature. If it is not changing its viscosity as a function of temperature, that means that material withstands lot of force, and that can be used as an efficient lubricating material. Okay, so you have to remember this viscosity and how a good lubricating material should be. Okay, so moving forward, so this is one example to show the effect of temperature over viscosity. Okay, right. So there are two plots you can see there. Not two plots, two beakers, and this beaker which is at low temperature, okay, and at low temperature the viscosity is higher. Consider a material which is having very high viscosity at normal temperature, right. So, this is what at low temperature the material is highly viscous because of its adhesive forces, and the viscosity is tabulated along the y axis, and this is against temperature, right. If you see, the viscosity is higher initially, and at lower temperatures it is slightly higher. The same material, when you start heating it up as a function of temperature, at high temperatures the cohesive forces are broken, and which was supposed to be a gel started flowing, right. The adhesive forces start broken and the material starts flowing, thereby the viscosity also got decreased. The viscosity also got decreased. As an increase in temperature, the viscosity got decreased, and that decrease is because of breaking up of the cohesive forces between the molecules when the temperature is increased. Okay, right. So, this is a pictorial representation how it goes as a function of temperature, right. The next slide we can see this one, right. So, you should have a balance between the viscosity of the lubricating oil, right. So, if it is too low or if it is too high, both are not accepted. You should have a balance between the viscosity so that it functions properly. Okay. So, what will happen if the viscosity is very low? So, if the viscosity is low, okay, the ability of the lubricant to form a film between the surfaces will become very thin. Okay. So, lubricating film cannot maintain between the moving surfaces. Since it is very thin, it can't withstand the force, so it will be easily thrown off and you will lead to excessive wear. Okay. If the viscosity of the lubricant material is very thin, if the viscosity is very less, it cannot form an uniform film between the moving surface. If the uniformity is not there, it can be easily thrown off and it can easily be removed and it will lead to damage to the material. Okay. So, this will happen if the viscosity is very less. Now, what will happen if the viscosity is high? If the viscosity is high, the liquid, since it is very thick, the friction will be very high and the movement of the material will also get hampered. Okay. So, if the material is very thick, the flowing or the movement of your material itself starts hindered. Because of this, your friction increases and that will also lead to waste in energy. Okay. So, it should not be either low or it should not be very high. So, it should have a balance between the high and the low end, then only it will be useful as an effective lubricant. Okay. So, to check whether the lubricant is effective or not, one parameter is designed. That parameter we call it as viscosity index. Okay. To check whether the material is having the required viscosity or not, and also to check what will be the effect of viscosity as a function of temperature, that is given by this viscosity index, right. It goes like this: the rate at which viscosity of an oil changes with temperature is measured by an arbitrary scale known as viscosity index. The effect of the rate of viscosity as a function of temperature is measured using this viscosity index. Along with it, you can also check whether the viscosity, the material is having the required viscosity or not. Okay. So, these two parameters can be obtained from this viscosity index characteristic, right. So, going on, the greater the viscosity index, what will happen, right. So, as I said, viscosity index, it will give you the rate of the viscosity change as a function of temperature. If the rate is very high, the rate of the viscosity change is very high, right. So, the greater the viscosity index, the smaller the change in the fluid viscosity. If the viscosity index is very high, that means the change in the fluid viscosity will be very low. So, there will not be any change in the viscosity even if you increase the temperature. So, if the viscosity index is higher, the change in the viscosity will be very less. Both are inversely proportional, right. And as I said, this is as a function of temperature. Now, thus, if a fluid with low viscosity index, right, and it will experience a relatively large swing in viscosity. If the viscosity index is very small, that means the viscosity of the material will be moving from lower end to the other end at a very big difference. So, the viscosity will move from low end to an higher end. So, there will be a huge gap between the viscosity difference as a function of temperature, right. So, at low viscosity index, the material will have a wide range of viscosity as a function of temperature, and this is not usually appreciated when it is used as a lubricant. Okay. So, at low viscosity index, the viscosity swing or the viscosity change will be very high, and which is not usually accepted in lubricants. Okay, right. So, high viscosity fluids in contrast are less affected by temperature changes, which I said in the earlier one, right. As I said, if the viscosity index is very high as a function of temperature, there won't be any change or drastic change in the viscosity while changing the temperature, right? And the best oils with the highest viscosity index remains stable. They remain stable and they don't vary much in viscosity over a temperature. Very good oils or lubricating oils will have the highest viscosity index, and this highest viscosity index makes the material stable and they don't allow the material to change its viscosity as a function of temperature. Okay, right? And this means if it is not going to change its temperature, that means the performance of the material or the machine will be enhanced, right? So, if this is not going to change, the performance of the material is going to be enhanced because of this lubricating property. Okay, right? So, I will show you one graph also how the temperature changes. Before that, we will see this one. So, to determine the viscosity index of an oil, okay, so what you have to do is the viscosity has to be measured at two different temperatures, one at a lower temperature and the other one at a higher temperature. To determine the viscosity index of an oil or a lubricating material, the viscosity has to be measured at two different temperatures, one at low temperature around 40 degrees and the other one at 100 degrees Celsius, right? And this temperature is then compared with a standard material or a standard oil, okay, which has got its own viscosity value, right? So, once you measure the viscosity of your test liquid at two different temperatures, that viscosity is going to be compared with two reference oils, right? And usually these two reference oils are these Pennsylvania oil, which has got a viscosity index of 100, okay, and the other one is naphthenic base Gulf oil, okay. So, usually GF, and the viscosity index of it is 0, right, and usually it is abbreviated as H oil for Pennsylvania and L oil for naphthalenic oil, right. So, you are going to measure the viscosity of the oil at two different temperatures, 40 and 100 degrees, and this viscosity is compared with a standard oils, two different oils, one having higher viscosity index and the other one having lower viscosity index. And using this simple equation, so which is given here at the right corner of this graph, where viscosity index is equal to A minus B into 100 divided by A minus C, and this A is nothing but your oil which has got the least viscosity index, that is your Gulf oil, and B is your test liquid, and C is your liquid oil which is having the highest viscosity index, right. So, using this equation you calculate the viscosity index, right, and as you see in this graph, the temperature increases along the x-axis, right, it increases along the x-axis, and the temperature at 40 and at 100 is measured, right. If you see the least viscosity index oil, you can see a drastic change in the viscosity, okay, as you increase the temperature, and you can see for the oil which is having the viscosity index of 0, it has got a huge change in the viscosity. This is the viscosity change. From the area you can calculate the viscosity change, okay, right. So, whereas for your highly viscous material, so there is only a small change, you can see only a small change with respect to your highly viscous index oil, right. So, this has got very less change and this has got very high change, right. So, this extreme cases are compared with your test liquid, and the number whatever we get, that will give you the viscosity index, and that viscosity index, if it is higher, that means it will not have a huge change in the temperature, change in the viscosity as a function of temperature. If your material is having very less viscosity index, that means the material will change its viscosity as a function of temperature drastically. Okay, so that is the one which is inferred from this plot or from this graph, right? So moving forward, the viscosity index of a conventional mineral oil should be between 95 to 100. Okay, the best oil should have a viscosity index in the range of 95 to 100. If it is having a viscosity index of that one, that means that material can be giving efficient property as a lubricant. Okay, so highly refined mineral oils have a viscosity index of approximately 120 degrees. So that is the good oil. If you have a better property, that is also welcome. Usually mineral oils are nothing but oils which are hydrocarbons which are obtained from petroleum wells, right? So these mineral oils will have a very high viscosity index of around 120. The reason is those are all hydrocarbons, and those hydrocarbons will not get broken or get changed when the temperature is increased. So in order to break these hydrocarbons, you need very high temperature. Because of this, they won't change in their property or in the adhesive or cohesive property. So because of this, there won't be any problem with this mineral oils used for using as lubricants. Okay, and synthetic lubricants will have around 250 viscosity index. This is depending on the usage. If you want to have a very high viscosity index, you can tailor make those viscosity lubricants, and that can be used as a lubricant. Okay, so this is few, and coming to the next one is neutralization number, right? As I said earlier, it is also called as acid value or acid number. Okay, neutralization number is nothing but acid value or acid number, and this is nothing but the amount of acid present in the given oil. This will give you an estimate of the amount of acid present in the given oil sample. So it goes like this: the neutralization number is the measure of acid or alkali content of oils, and it is an indicator of the degree of degradation which is mainly due to oxygen. Okay, so this gives an idea about the amount of acid or alkali present in the oil, and it will also give you an idea about how much extent the oil has been degraded because of oxygen or oxidative degradation, right? So this is given by neutralization number. By definition, this neutralization number is represented as the amount of alkali, especially KOH, which is used to neutralize the free acid present in a fixed amount of oil. Okay, so acid number or neutralization number by definition is defined as the amount of alkali, that is KOH, in milligrams, which is required to neutralize the free acid present in the oil, which is fixed in a fixed weight. Okay, so this is your acid number, right? As per standards, lubricant oil which has got an acid value of less than 0.1 acid is 0.1 is always preferred. As per standards, lubricant oil should have an acid value of less than 0.1, and if it exceeds 0.1, that means that oil is contaminated with acid, and that acid can either be externally added or it can be degradation of the oil because of oxygen. Okay, so as per standards, the lubricant oil should have less than 0.1 acid value or neutralization number. If the number is exceeding, that shows that there is presence of acid in the system, and that acid might be because of degradation because of oxygen. Okay, so this is what given here. An increase in the acid number of a used oil indicates higher amount of acidic substance which has been absorbed or created. Okay, so this acid number is very important, because higher amount of acid will not give you efficient property. So right, so we will see what is an oil, why this acid content is coming to this system. So oils and fats are nothing but triglycerides, right, and these triglycerides are easily converted into their respective fatty acids, right, by simple hydrolysis, right. So this hydrolysis gives you the acid to the system, and because of this acid, the acid value can be calculated, and this breakage or hydrolysis of hydrolysis of oils and fats will give you the rancidification. That means it starts smelling. Okay, right. So this is the source of acid in the oil, and this can happen because of oxygen or increase in temperature. So a material or a lubricant should withstand this hydrolysis process if it has to be used as a lubricant, right. Okay, so this is a difference between the normal oil and rancified oil. You can see how the color has been changed, and this color change itself indicates there is some other component present in the oil which has to be removed in order to improve the property. Okay, right. So in a typical procedure, how this is done is the known amount of sample is dissolved in an organic solvent, especially isopropanol, right, and this one is titrated with a solution of potassium hydroxide, and using an indicator of naphthalene, and this will give you the color change when you titrate this excess potassium hydroxide against HCl. Okay, so this is how this neutralization number is calculated. You take the oil, add excess of potassium hydroxide, okay, and you back titrate the excess alkali. That will give you the neutralization number. Okay, right. So coming back to the next one, that is your saponification number, and there is a small difference between neutralization number and saponification number. More or less both are same, but only difference is in the case of saponification, or in the case of saponification number. So this is going to estimate the overall acid content present in the system. It's not only the free acid, it also accounts the acid's source also. That is, it will give you the amount of triglyceride or esters present in the system. Okay, so saponification number will give you the overall acid content present in the system. That acid content is not only the free acid, it also accounts for the free esters, the ester of that particular acid in the system, right. So it is the amount of, the definition is same. Okay, it is the amount of KOH required to saponify an oil at a fixed weight and all these things, but the difference is it is going to give you the overall acid content present in the system, and saponification means hydrolysis in presence of alkali. Okay, so saponification is hydrolysis of an ester in presence of alkali to give the respective alcohol and salt of fatty acid. So this is the definition for saponification: hydrolysis of esters in presence of alkali to give alcohol and salt of free acid, right. So this saponification number is used to check whether animal oil or vegetable oil is added to the lubricant. Okay, so why this animal oil and vegetable oil? These oils are nothing but triglycerides of long chain fatty acids, right. So those are the sources of acids, whereas mineral oil, as I said, those are from petroleum base. They don't have any esters in it, they have only hydrocarbons in it. So if you take an oil and if it shows some saponification number, that means along with this mineral oil, vegetable oil or animal oil has been added to modify the property. Okay, so this has been done. This saponification number is used to check whether the mineral oil is contaminated with either animal oil or vegetable oil. Okay, so this is your triglyceride, and in presence of KOH, it starts breaking into alcohol and long chain fatty acids, right. So this is the equation for that. Okay, right. So the method is used, as I said, to determine the total acid content, which is both free and combined in the oil. So combined, as I said, it is in the form of esters, and acid number only measures the free acid, right. If you remember, acid number is nothing but your neutralization number, right. So this neutralization number gives you only the free acid present in it, whereas your saponification will give you free acid and the sources of that free acid also in the form, which are in the form of esters. So the combined acids are preliminary esters formed by reaction with the neutral components present in the original oil. So that is your esters which is present in the oil, right. Okay. So the next property which we are going to see is aniline point or aniline number, and this is nothing but the lowest temperature up to which aniline and the solvent, which is nothing but oil, which has to be tested, remains in a completely miscible state. The temperature up to which aniline and your oil stays in an uniform or in an homogeneous phase is called as aniline point or aniline number. Okay. So this indicates the type of hydrocarbon present in the system. Okay. So the solvent here is nothing but your oil or the lubricant, whatever you can take, right. So this indicates the type of hydrocarbon present in the system. This can be either aliphatic or saturated or unsaturated or saturated, and it can be aromatic, right. So the hydrocarbon can be either aliphatic or aromatic. The type of oil, the type of hydrocarbon present in the oil can be estimated by this aniline number. If the content of aromatic is higher, okay, if the amount of aromatic material is present, aromatic hydrocarbon in the oil is very high, okay, then the temperature required to get complete miscibility will be lower. Okay. If your material, if the oil is having very high hydrocarbon content, which is in the form of aromatics, right, if the material is having very high aromatic thing, then the temperature required to get a complete miscibility will be very, very low. At lower temperature itself, it starts getting miscible or it can separate very fast. Okay. Higher number of aniline point indicates lower percentage of aromatics present in the system, and low aniline point means high amount of aromatic system present in the system. Okay. So this can be identified using this aniline point. Okay, right. So how it is determined? So it's very simple. So aniline and the oil, which are taken at equal proportions, are mixed together, okay, and that is slightly heated in order to get an homogeneous solution, okay, and this homogeneous solution is cooled, right. While cooling, at one point of time it starts clouding and then it starts separating. The point or the temperature at which these two phases separate is called as aniline point. Okay, so it's written here, the temperature at which separation of the two phases takes place is called aniline point. Okay, so this is how it is done. It's a very simple experiment which can be done easily in a lab. Okay, right. So this is the apparatus which is used to do this aniline point. Okay, right. Moving on to the next property, which is cloud point and pour point. Okay, this is also as a function of temperature how the material behaves, right. So cloud point and pour point. Pour point is the lowest temperature at which the product continues to flow when it is cooled. Okay, the temperature up to which the liquid can flow is called as pour point. Exceeding this temperature, the material will not flow, it stops flowing. Okay, right. So that is the point where it can flow, and above that point it stops pouring. Okay, it starts as a gel or as a solid, right. So pour point is the lowest temperature at which the product continues to flow when it is cooled without stirring. Okay, and what is cloud point? Cloud point is the temperature at which the components within the fluid starts precipitating when it is cooled. Okay, this is the temperature at which the material starts crystallizing or precipitating. That is called as cloud point, which becomes hazy. So it becomes opaque, right. So that will be the temperature when the phase has been changed. So from a solid, from a liquid, it starts crystallizing and you will end up with some kind of crystals or precipitates. Though that is your cloud point. The cloud point and pour point temperatures are helpful to determine the storage temperature. Okay, so this is used to determine the storage temperature, up to which temperature you can store this, right, because if some cases when it is stored at very low temperature, it becomes difficult to pump it out from the storage. So you have to choose a temperature up to which it can be stored, and it can be easily taken out for the purpose whatever it is intended, right. So you should know this temperature up to which it gets solidified. So for this cloud point and pour point is very, very essential. So how this cloud point and pour point is measured, and this is measured in a simple way. First, a vial is filled with the sample, okay, and is placed into the sample changer, okay, and the system is cooled, okay, at a controlled manner, and this cooling will happen at a rate of 1.5 degrees Celsius per minute, and the change in the cloudiness of the material is monitored by optical detectors, right. So first it starts forming a precipitate, kind of a hazy material, and that will be your cloud point, okay. And next, the pour point is determined by measuring the pressure differential across the cooling cell and by monitoring the temperature at which the pressure differential changes, right. So this is how pour point is measured, okay. So I will show you a representation of how it is done. So you can see it here. So this is your apparatus. You fill your vials with the respective oil, okay, at one point. So this is your cloud point. You can see here the formation of crystals, right, once the temperature is lowered, and this is your cloud point, right. And cloud point is measured at the bottom of the jar in order to get the right temperature, whereas here, okay, so which is the pour point, you can see there is no flow of your oil when the test tube is tilted. So this is the temperature at which the free flowing or the flowiness of the oil has been stopped. The temperature at which the flowiness of the oil or the sample is stopped is called as your pour point, okay. So this is how it is measured. So you can see this, it's a very simple instrument. Only thing is you have to have a very controlled rate of cooling, right, okay, right. And this is another representation of your cloud point and pour point. What happens here is the wax crystals, whatever present in the oil, it starts agglomerating at lower temperatures. So because of this agglomeration of this waxy materials, it starts forming crystals at lower temperature, and with decreasing temperature, this stops the flowiness of the liquid, okay. So this wax is very, very important. That determines the cloud point and pour point of an oil, and this one is usually when these oils are to be used at very low temperatures, they will add additives to this lubricants, and these additives break the wax agglomeration, and once this wax gets removed or gets broken up, then the oil can flow very easily. Usually at regions where the temperature is very low, they use these kind of lubricants to decrease the pour point. Okay, right. So these are some of the oils with their respective pour points. You can see here a multigrade engine oil has got a pour point of minus 35 degrees Celsius up to minus 35 degrees. You can use that oil because up to that temperature it will be flowing, right? And synthetic lubricants will have around minus 32, and you can see here the turbine oil which has got minus 18 degrees only. It starts freezing very fast, that is at minus 18 degrees compared to the other oils, right? So this is about cloud point and pour point, and the next one we are going to see is flash point and fire point. Okay, so the flash point is the lowest temperature to which a lubricant must be heated before its vapor, okay, when it mixes with the oil and it starts igniting. Okay, right. So the flash point is the lowest temperature to which the lubricant can be heated before the vapor of that liquid starts catching fire when it mixes with the atmospheric oxygen. Okay, so that we call it as flash point, and the fire point is the temperature at which the lubricant combustion will be sustained. So this sustaining is not for a longer period of time, for only 5 seconds. If the fuel catches fire and if it stays for a fixed amount of time, that is for 5 seconds, and that point is called as your fire point. Okay, so flash point and fire point. Flash point is nothing but the lowest temperature at which it catches fire and it goes off, whereas the fire point, it catches fire but it stays for a longer time, especially 5 seconds, and that point is called as fire point. So the fire point for lubricant is usually 8 to 10% above the flash point. So fire point is slightly higher than the flash point because it has to stay for a longer time and more vapor has to be produced in the case of fire point when compared to flash point, right? The flash point and fire point should not be confused with this important one, which is auto ignition temperature, right? So fire point and flash point should not be confused with auto ignition temperature, and this auto ignition temperature is the temperature at which the lubricant will ignite spontaneously without an external ignition source. It doesn't require any external ignition source. It catches fire on its own, right? So this should not be confused with your fire point and your flash point. So auto ignition, it doesn't require any external source to get it ignited. It ignites on its own without any source, whereas flash point and fire point requires an ignition source, and that too it will be for a very fixed time or a fixed duration. Okay, right. So we should not confuse with this auto ignition temperature. So this is just a pictorial representation of all the three. So here you can see the flash point, it starts and then it puts off, right? It won't stay for a longer time, and you can see the vapor concentration of all these things, and the vapor concentration of flash point is very less compared to the others, and fire point, it burns and it stays for a few seconds, and that is your fire point. And this auto ignition, you can see here the vapor is very high, and the vapor is always in a higher side, so that it starts igniting or it starts burning spontaneously on its own, right? So it should not be confused with these two, fire point and flash point. Okay, right. So moving on, so the flash point can be used to determine, so this is used to determine the transportation and storage temperature, similar to your cloud point. So this is also cloud point and flow point. This is also used up to what temperature it can be stored and up to what temperature it has to be maintained when it is getting transported. While transportation, the temperature might fluctuate, and if the temperature fluctuates, more vapor might be generated. So if you have an idea at what temperature vapors will be produced, then we can maintain the system at a fixed temperature so that no vapor and no flash or no fire can happen. Okay, so this flash point can be used to determine the transportation and storage temperature, which has to be known when it is going to be used or transported. A lubricant exhibiting a flash point significantly lower than the normal will have more amount of volatile components in it. Okay, so if a system is having more flash point than the other one, then that means it will have high amount of volatile component present in it, which can be of different sources, and that will reduce the lubricating property. Okay, so products with a flash point less than 38 degrees Celsius will usually be requiring a special precaution processes. Okay, so any lubricant which has got a flash point less than 38 degrees Celsius will usually require a special precautions so that the vapor density will be reduced and it can be easily transported and used efficiently. Okay, right. This is how flash point and fire point is measured. You take the oil in a cup, okay, and that cup, you can see here, the oil is poured in a cup and which is placed in a thermocouple, and it is slightly heated up. So it is slightly heated up. When it starts heating, slowly the oil starts getting into its vapor phase at one point of time. So it catches fire, okay, and that it catches fire and it puts off, right. So that point is called as flash point, okay, and the temperature increase is very controlled. So it will be around 2 degrees Celsius per you have to measure the flash point every 2 degrees Celsius increment. So once the material catches fire as a flash at a particular temperature, that will be taken as the flash point, and if you still increase the temperature and if more and more volatile materials are liberated, at one point of time the catched fire will stay for few seconds, and that temperature is called as fire point. Okay, so flash point and fire point is only between the time up to which the fire can withhold. So that is called as flash point, fire point. Okay, right. So moving on to the next one, which is carbon residue. This is nothing but the amount of the carbonous material which will be deposited over the material, over these instruments or metals, right. So when it is started combusting or when it starts burning, right. So the carbon residue of a crude oil product gives the indication of the propensity for that product to form carbonaceous residue under thermal ignition or conditions, right. So carbon residue of the crude oil gives you the indication of amount of carbon material that will be deposited over the material when the material starts burning. Okay, so it shows the cracking tendency of the oil. Cracking is nothing but breaking up of the oil into smaller fragments, right. So this gives you, an idea about the breaking or the cracking of the oil material in the lubricant. Okay, so heavy oils have a tendency to crack at higher temperatures, right. So heavy oils will have very high temperatures in order to break, and they will lead to very less carbon deposition. Okay, and the amount of carbon formed during the cracking provides an idea of usability of oil at high temperatures. If a material is going to give you less amount of byproducts, that is always advantageous. So here also, if the amount of carbon produced after usage is very less, that means that oil will be very efficient. So the amount of carbon formed during cracking provides an idea of the usability of oil at very high temperature. And the last one, so this carbon residue can be measured by using two different methods. One is Condorcet method and the other one is Ramsbottom method. Okay. So typically what they do is they take the material, evaporate all the excess volatile material, and once it is get volatilized, the solid residue is burnt completely, right? And once everything is burnt, so the sample is cooled and the residue whatever remains, that will be measured, that will be your carbon residue. Okay. So the material will be completely burnt and whatever remains, that will give you the carbon residue in grams. Okay. So this gives you the usability of these lubricants at very high temperature, how much carbon will be removed or deposited when it starts burning to give energy. Okay. So this finishes the properties of lubricants. Okay. And we will continue with our session in the next class, and that will be about abrasives, and we will see it in the next module. And thank you for your kind attention. See you in the next module.